Hello, grade 4. So I wanted to go over the Your Turn workbook pages that we did in class together. There were a couple that were on the plan that we did not do. We ran out of time, so I want to go over the ones that we did do together with you. Um, I don't know if you can hear the noise in the background, but there's a wedding in my building and they're driving me crazy, lots of noise. All right, let's do page 91 to start. This is vocabulary practice. Brittle, creative, descriptive, and outstretched. First word is creative. Remember, creative means to do something in a new and innovative way. The artist is respected for his creative use of colors and patterns. So his way of using colors and using patterns is different than others. Outstretched. Before she made the amazing catch, she jumped as high as she could and opened her outstretched hand. Remember, outstretched means to extend or to stretch out. Okay? Descriptive. Descriptive means to describe in words. I really like the author's writing because she uses vivid words and descriptive details. These are words that actually help you to see what the author is talking about and visualize. Brittle. The old newspaper I found in the attic was so brittle it fell apart in my hands. Remember, I told you brittle means that it breaks easily, and brittle is often, most often, associated with dryness, something that is dry, like paper, leaves, crackers, okay, things that are dry. All right, next we're going to go to page 95. And we have a poem here. We're going to skip one of the questions because we did not have time this week to go over rhyme scheme, but I'll explain that as we get down to the question. And we will do rhyme scheme again when we do another unit of poetry. All right. The Nautilus. The strangest creature in the sea? Some say the eight-legged octopus. The oddest always seemed to me to be the baffling Nautilus. He peeks out from his spiral shell while sailing on a backward trip. He doesn't seem to know too well how best to steer his puzzling ship. All right, so this poem is talking about the Nautilus. This is a sea creature. It's asking what is the strangest creature in the sea. And it says that some people say it's the octopus, but he thinks, the person who wrote the poem, thinks that the oddest, the strangest one is the Nautilus, and that is this creature. It says he peeks out from his shell. You can see his little eye peeking out, and he sails backwards. When he moves, he goes backwards. It says he doesn't know too well how to steer his puzzling ship, so that he doesn't know how to go forward. He only goes backwards. Now, this is a lyric poem, and remember, I told you we are studying two types of poems this week. One is haiku, and the other is lyric poem. Now, haiku, we know, is a three-line poem with the rhyming pattern 5, 7, and 5 syllables. We can look at this poem and tell that this is not a haiku. Our first stanza has 4 lines, and our second stanza has 4 lines. So we can tell right away this is not a haiku just from the number of lines. Okay, let's see. The wedding people are getting closer and the noise is getting louder. They're going to drive me crazy. Okay, um, so what makes this a lyric poem? We realized it's not a haiku. Why is it a lyric poem? It expresses the thoughts of the poet. He talks about what he thinks about this nautilus and that it's an odd and strange creature who can't control the way his ship, he calls it, moves around. And it also has rhyme and meter. If you notice when I read the poem, I read it with emphasis and stressed syllables. Okay? All right, so that's what makes it a lyric poem. Now we skipped the rhyme scheme. I've told the class we will learn rhyme scheme, but we will do it later in the year, and I will do a full lesson on rhyme scheme only, not mixed in with the poetry. All right, and it says, what does the poet think about the nautilus? We talked about that. He thinks that the nautilus is strange and that it works in a way that doesn't make sense because he's always moving backwards. All right, that's it for 95. You can pause the video, you can come back, you can replay it. but you should jot this down in your turn practice workbook on page 95. All right, we're going to move on to the next page. We took a look at page 96. I explained to the students this is a excerpt, which means a part of a poem about deer. All right, we'll read it quickly together. Then they dart away, they meaning the deer, their tails held high, 6 white arrows point at the sky. We don't even get to say goodbye. Into the night they disappear, and though they move as quick as spears, a little later they'll be back here. All right, it asks us to find 2 examples of rhyme. We've found quite a few. There's high and sky, sky and goodbye, high and goodbye, disappear and spears, spears and here, disappear and here. Okay, all rhyming. All right. We wrote down high and sky. We didn't write all the things that they wrote. They wrote tails held high and at the sky. We only wrote high and sky. And we wrote disappear and spears. All right, what kind of meter appears? The rhythm always ends on an accented syllable. If you notice when I read the poem, I put the accent on the end of the end of each line. Then they dart away, their heads held high, 6 white arrows point at the sky. We don't even get to say goodbye. Into the night they disappear, and though they move as quick as spears, a little later they'll be back here. So the accent, the stress, the extra, the emphasis, remember we talked about this, goes on the end of the line. So the rhythm always ends on a stressed, accented, or emphasized syllable. How do the meter and rhyme affect the poem? I did explain to the students too that I would not test you on meter and rhyme. I'm sorry, on meter, not meter and rhyme, on meter. Rhyme, I will. Rhythm and rhyme. Um, Rhythm and rhyme are 2 different things. Rhythm is the pattern of the poem, like the sound that sounds like music. This is the rhythm, the beat that the poem makes when reading it. And the meter is the pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables. I will not test you on rhythm or meter in this quiz, but you do have to know what rhyming is and be able to pull examples of rhyme out of poems. Now, we remember rhyme means that words end with the same sound. All right, so we talked about the fact that it says meter carries the reader along, meaning that the meter is the pattern that you follow when you're reading, and the rhyme makes the poem seem more like music, lyrical, like the lyrics to a song, than it does a narrative, a story that is being told. All right, it asks us to write another stanza. We did not write another stanza. So what you need to write on this page is number 1, 2, and 3. Remember though, I will not ask you um, about rhythm or meter other than to know what meter is on this quiz. Okay? You can pause and come back to complete 96. 97, we read the small sentences here, and we picked out the simile or metaphor in each sentence. Then we talked about the 2 things that are being compared in each one. Now, I did explain to the students that you do have to know what a simile and a metaphor is. You have to be able to tell the difference between them. You have to be able to identify them. If I asked you, is this a simile or a metaphor, you have to be able to tell me which one it is. Remember, a metaphor does not use like or as when comparing 2 things that are different. A simile uses the word like or the word as in comparing 2 things that are different. The only difference is the simile uses like or as. The metaphor does not. Now, I will give you sentences and you have to tell me if it's a simile or metaphor and the 2 things that are being compared. Let's do these together. We see them again, these are the deer that we're talking about. We see them sitting under trees at night in my yard like the photo of a family. This is our comparison. And is this a simile or a metaphor? It is a simile because it uses the word like. Okay, I told the students you can write simile over here on the side to help you remember which one it is. Now, what two things are we comparing in our comparison? We see them. Them are the deer. So we see deer sitting, and we are comparing them to a family photo. Now, if you were to write for me deer, I will not use words like them or we or words that are not clear for you. I will use specifics in the examples that I give you so it'll be easy for you to tell me what we are comparing. Uh, so here, if you were to write deer and photo, I would accept that, okay? All right, the next one, remember again, this is a simile because it uses the word like. Then they dart away, their tails held high, 6 white arrows point at the sky. Okay, again, we're talking about they or the deer. So we're talking about the deer's tails, okay, deer tails, and we're talking about arrows. They compare the tails to arrows in the sentence, okay? Is this a simile or a metaphor? This is a metaphor. I told them we can write on the side. Metaphor because it does not use the word like, it does not use the word as. Into the night they disappear, and though they move as quick as spears, a little later they'll be back here. All right, so it says into the night they disappear. In the point, it's talking about the deer. If you were to write deer for me, that is fine. If you read the whole poem, you would know that the deer are running away. So that's why it says deer running. I would accept from you deer. I will not, again, use words like they. Your sentences will have specific words like the word deer. Okay? And though they move as quick as spears. So it's talking about spears. It describes it as flying because what do you do with the spear? You throw it and it flies across the air. So if you were to write for me deer and spears are being compared, I would accept that. Now let's look at the comparison here. Is this a simile or a metaphor? As quick as spears. It's simile because we use the word as. Okay? And that's it for the workbook pages in your turn. All right? Have a nice evening. Bye bye.